Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rebels and Flux. My name is Chris Netto. I am the host, and today I'm super excited to be joined by Mr. Steve Picanza. How are you, sir?
Mr. Netto, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, I am just trying to put a spotlight on some people out in our industry. You kind of hang out off to the side, which is great because you are not a tech person per se.
No.
But what you do affects tech because you are a product branding, marketing guru, specialist.
Guy. Just call me a guy.
All right.
Or you know what? I can just be the rebel, right? I can just be that rebel on the outside.
That's why you're here, man. That's why we do what we do.
I love it.
It's all about, how the different ideas are affecting AV. And in this particular episode, I want to go into what you do, how you do things, and where does AV fit into somebody like yourself?
Yeah.
So first of all, let's start off by talking a little bit about you. What is it that you do that makes you so rebellious?
It's a loaded question. But I think, first and foremost is I help B2B organizations to simplify their messaging and create impactful marketing materials. And in doing so, the goal is you're going to connect with your audience and grow your business. And like super simple, super basic, especially in B2B and AV, it's very much in a B2B world. Marketing is usually a second thought. Branding is usually a second thought. Usually it's whatever's good enough gets pushed out. And, the consumer, whether you're B2B or B2C, it's still people, right? You're still marketing to a person. So we need to make it simple, right? Like the worst thing I ever hear, and I hear it all the time is, Steven or Chris, what do you do? And the first thing you say, well, it's complicated. Oh man, dude, you've lost me. I don't care who you are. You've lost whoever you're talking to. When you automatically just, prerequisite, what I do is so complicated and I'm trying to make my value so high by making this so complicated. Nobody cares. Like I want to make sure that how easy it is to work with you, right? I want it as simple as 1, 2, 3. And the brands I work with, that's what I'm trying to instill is just proactive branded marketing strategies that are simple, impactful, and are really focused on conversion and not necessarily creative for creative sake or design or super tech speak to, justify your price. But no, we solve X problem for X audience. How can I help you?
Awesome. Let's start with the first problem that you just said there. If you say good enough one more time, I am going to promptly end this show because that is one of my I absolutely hate when you get to just to that good enough level, right? It's the, D gets a degree,
Right.
D doesn't get a degree. It just pays, maybe it pays the bills, but what is it really adding is in terms of value, right?
Or even worse, like what is it taking away from your brand? But just by being good enough. So for example, you can walk through any trade show or conference, take your pick and, 9 out of 10 brands over there have bad marketing materials and they're handing you a bad sales sheet that doesn't necessarily, it's all a bunch of grids and graphs and stuff that nobody's going to ever look at again. To me, that's good enough. You made it here. Congratulations. You have your 10 by 10 booth and you're doing awesome stuff by having that. But if we just look at it a little bit differently and put a little bit more emphasis on the problem you're solving and for who, I guarantee you're going to leave here with more leads, more quality leads, better conversations, and people are going to have clarity over your message. Because if you confuse, you're going to lose. And too many B2B companies are confusing.
Which is great because I brought you here because you're not just talking the talk here. You actually teach this stuff at a university.
Yeah.
Am I correct? What is the university and the title?
Sure.
There, the class that you do teach.
So I teach at Drexel University outside of Philadelphia, branding and marketing, essentially. So we actually, my other business partner and I created a digital marketing certificate program. So we started this actually at USD in San Diego many years ago. So we curated all of the instructors, we put the program notes together and the program content, and then we staffed it. And so we started there, and then we kind of replicated our concept here outside Philadelphia. You look at traditional institutions, higher education institutions, and they're falling behind. Digital transformation is taking away some of their business. And so by offering these classes to working adults or to graduate students, postgraduate, who want to continuously be learning, we're essentially helping the next generation of marketers. So I teach at Drexel, and then I also I teach once a year in Italy at the European Institute of Design in Milan. And so they bring me out once a year in September and to do a master class really on the EU side. And a lot of these students are either EU or EMEA, right, or Middle East. They want to think like an American brand. They want to market like an American, and where they come from and in other countries. And there's, global differences in marketing, branding, culture. Absolutely. America's always been on the forefront. And so bringing in international instructors can be kind of add a layer of thought that perhaps they didn't get in their just theory classes or in working with the EU brand. So it helps me, it keeps me on track too, because I need to kind of look at this global perspective on what's going on and what really is going to move the needle.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up, because one of the things that we don't put a lot of thought into, if you are a American-centric company and you develop materials that are based on what America thinks is right, or what we value as important in whatever XYZ brand or product, that may not come across the same way as it moves across the Atlantic or the Pacific for that matter.
Right.
So it's very interesting that there has to be an awareness of a global perspective. And to be honest with you, it should be marketing 101, is that you're no longer just local, that you have to act global. Or you have to think global and act local. I think that's the saying or the buzz. And I love the fact that you bring up transformation or digital transformation, because a lot of companies are amidst that. And some people out there will call it buzz. It's not buzz. It's actual factual type of business transformation that's happening. You can label it digital transformation because it's an easy catchphrase to put as what you're doing. But part of digital transformation is understanding the bigger picture and not just adding a computer to it or some AI and calling it, that. So good. Thank you for the background on that. And by the way, I also know that you're into the alternative learning perspective, because I did catch your class over on Udemy. And if the people that are listening have never used Udemy is basically a pay class that you can go on the website, grab lectures and seminars and get a certificate based on that stuff. So I have taken Steven's class. If you guys haven't, you may be out there. I think you're in the midst of changing it right now.
I am, but
see, you're in the midst of changing it, but there are alternative methods. And I think that it's not just a world of bachelors and masters and doctorates anymore. Certificates and experiences, basically bringing up that end.
100%.
Yeah. So now I know that, we went into the marketing and branding stuff and we talked a little bit about Europe, but you came home about a year ago? A couple of months ago.
Yeah, about 6 months ago.
After traveling the world, you came back, and of all places, you find yourself at Infocomm this year.
I did.
Here's a marketing and branding guy with no tech. Well, you have an interest in tech, but you're not a tech guy.
Right.
And you're out there checking out what's going on at Infocomm. How was this your first Infocomm?
This was my first Infocomm. So I've attended DSE for many, many, many years. I've attended CES and some more retail-based trade shows. But Infocomm, this was my cherry popping ceremony.
Interesting. So tell me, what were your thoughts as a first timer walking through the show floor, as a marketing person, not necessarily a guy who's out there looking for a particular type of technology?
I mean, I was super impressed with the breadth of the show, right? Like there was a lot larger as a footprint perspective than I was anticipating. Obviously you have what happens at like DSC happening there, but then there was the live audio and the pro sound and just a lot more having to deal with this idea of brand experience. And when I come there, in the brand experience world, we're looking at design, we're looking at brand messaging, we're looking at tech, we're looking at all these different mediums that when like a Rubik's Cube that when put together are going to create an awe-inspiring brand experience that's going to live on, hopefully, in the hearts and minds of your audience a lot further after. And so, putting that hat on and walking around, I start to see, of course, surface level, right? Like I kind of have a couple different layers when I go to a show. Like number one,
like an onion.
Yeah, I'm looking at booth design, right? First and foremost, like the outside layer is that onion, does it look something I want to grab?
Yeah.
Booth design, I'm looking at like the layout of the booth. I'm looking at something as simple as, is the staff friendly, right? Or are they just going there like sharks looking to just get leads, right? Scan your badge, get a lead, scan your badge, get a lead, or they actually looking to try to solve a problem. So I think that's the first layer. Then, I'm looking at marketing materials. I'm looking at something. So much of the world of marketing and branding these days is intangible. There's nothing we can grab. There's nothing that we can grasp per se. So I'm looking at those tangible items. Are there little, giveaways? Are there sales sheets? Are there decks that are given out or whatever? And then I'm just looking at like the tech or whatever that offer is in general on the use case. Right? I think there's a lot of shiny, bright new objects everywhere during a show like Infocomm. But what's the use case? Like, give me like, who is going to use this? And I mean, I hate to even use this term. I sound like a CMO, but like, what's my return on this? If I'm going to buy this crazy expensive screen that does, everything I want it and I have all these curves, where can I use it? What happens if a little kid touches it and, because I have it inside of a mall? Like, have we thought about that? So I'm kind of going to these shows and I'm looking at it in a couple of different layers just to kind of, figure out whether or not A, I belong here, and B, is it worth me having conversations, and how can I try to connect some dots here?
It's funny that you attend the show in a different way. And the reason why I wanted to bring you on also as somebody who attended the show, the big hype, all the conversation is about end users going to a show and how end users have become a big portion of this. But for years, the content creation and marketing guys have been intending kind of quietly in the background, kind of doing things. I mean, I know you were out there with a team of people that were, checking out products and what's out there and how this message is coming across. But it's unique that you as a content creator were going there because you guys understand that the technology is a means to get your message out, right? So the technology is just the display or the projector. That's unique to old school Infocomm, exhibitors, because in the fact that there was just people that were going there looking to buy stuff,
right?
The stuff that you're looking at is stuff that your partners are using. So if a partner comes to you and says, hey, we got a 4K projector or an 8K projector, you can go to an Infocomm and check out what that projector does, how bright it is, how does it show what we're doing. And for years, many people, and I could be wrong, but, content creators were hired by exhibitors for years. And they create this big vision of what they were expecting this to be, handed over to, say, a manufacturer or an exhibitor, and then find that their work went on a 55-inch display on the wall. And it doesn't really connect with everything else. And I think that's what you're there also looking at is, this content may have been great. It was shown on a 55-inch monitor, but there was no connection to the rest of the story. And in today's world, tell me if I'm wrong, the story or the storytelling is as equally as important as the marketing material or the, storytelling is marketing.
It's everything. It's that journey. It's it's during, it's post, right? Like it's not just, for years, especially in the digital signage world, like the running joke is, just put it up on the wall and once again, it'll be fine, right? That's good enough. Just put it up on the wall. But like, no. But let's think about the whole journey. Like, let's think about, if we're doing an activation, a brand activation, wherever it is, like what is that messaging beforehand and who is that audience we're trying to connect with and what that story we're telling them, and then during the activation, what's happening, and then post-activation, how are we following up? What's the attribution? How are we looking at analytics? How are we looking at the success of whatever it is? And so, as a content creator now, I think, it's become, I think perhaps in the past, content was a little bit more black and white, whereas now it's becoming a lot more we have to look at this at everything as a journey, right? Everything's got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's not just, transactional for transactional sake is not necessarily winning over new audiences. And I think today, competition is so fierce, and brands are coming and going faster than we can blink. So how do you stay relevant, right? How do you stay top of mind? How do brands continue to, I don't want to say reinvent their position, but continue to solidify their position to their audience? And by doing so, by thinking a little bit outside the box, not just thinking about the one singular piece of content that's going on the 55-inch screen, but everything that's leading up to it, everything that's going away from it, and really making that ecosystem. And so that's where, tech plays an integral part. Absolutely. But we really just got to think about this a lot more holistically.
Yeah. So what is your advice? Basically, people are watching this, or if there's a company watching this, what is, a quick tip that you can give these guys when they're planning out the next strategy, when it comes to even going to a local show or Infocomm is once a year, but during the year, they're on the road, they're doing road shows, they're doing these other things.
Yeah.
How do you build, how could they build up to, for example, to an Infocomm using smaller shows, for example, with their brand messaging? Is that something that you would do as part of a bigger story?
Yeah, man. And it's such a key question because I think a lot of brands are asking that question. And I think the idea is, first and foremost, empathy, right? Who is the audience? What are their wants and needs? What are their huge problem areas, right? Mm-hmm. Survey them. Talk to your audience. But we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Let's use that, So figure out what their main pain points are. And that could happen in many different ways, right?
Yeah.
If you're a company, if you're a brand, you don't have an email list. First and foremost, you got to start building an email list. Mm-hmm. Email is paramount, even in 2019, as much as it was in 2009, and even in 1999.
Yeah.
And so by asking surveys, giving some kind of incentive for participating in a survey. Yeah. But from there, you're going to get some valuable information, and you're going to get some information about how to better market your product, how to better talk about your product, how to, perhaps a feature or a benefit of your product that you never even thought about, or maybe perhaps you had low on the totem pole, but actually it's a lot higher. And so I would use smaller shows as a way to just, continuously gauge your audience, continuously to build that brand equity. And again, if you are attending smaller shows and leading up to a larger Infocomm, you want that buzz to build. So by the time you're at Infocomm, you are a destination. You're not just some random schmucky business in the back of, row 1900, but I have to go and see XYZ company because they've emailed me. I understand what's happening. And the email isn't just so transactional. Look how cool we are and look how cool we are. But give me some personality. Give me some use case. Give me some value. Right?
I've never thought that email would be a status symbol of being cool, but hey, man, I'm hearing it here now. But
perfect example, Chris. One of the we do a lot of work. I do a lot of work, kind of fractional CMO with OpenEye Global, right? And as content creators, and our email statistic open rates and click-through rates are ridiculous, double industry standard. And the reason why is, number one, we're consistent. We've built trust and we're reliable. And to me, in order to build trust, right, trust equals reliability plus delight. So you're going to get at least 1 email from us per month. You know that we're going to be adding value. We're not going to be spammy. It's not just going to be all about us, that we're trying to always position ourselves as an industry leader or a thought leader or whatever it is. Yeah. And by doing that over time and leveraging email in a smart way, to, again, reiterate your position and reiterate, your stance on whatever it is, in turn, you're going to be building that trust. And in turn, you're going to have that brand recognition. And that's really what it comes down to. And email is a great way to do it.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. I appreciate that. That's some good stuff. Email being a major tip. For you guys that are listening or watching, get your analytics and your metrics together, do some focus groups, and survey. I mean, it does sound kind of odd, but surveying and getting that voice of the customer to build that program up so that by the time you're ready to go to an Infocomm, you're kind of ready to go. If you're an exhibitor, if you're not an exhibitor and you are an integrator and you're visiting it, it's still good information to have. So build up those analytics, build up those metrics, regardless of what, your shiny new product is. You got to understand first.
And you mentioned something. You mentioned something that right now I just want to hit upon. Like if you're an integrator or you're a service provider, right? Just take a service provider, have your one-liner down pat. Somebody asks
the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch. If somebody asks you what to do, what you do, you have one opportunity to get it right. Don't fumble over it. Don't make it too long-winded. I mean, have it down like I solve X problem for X. And you're going to laugh, right? But like, here's some tips and tricks, right? If you have a staff, well, offer, say, hey, we're going to do something random, right? Take $500 out a month, right? In $5 bills and go around randomly and ask your staff, what do you do? What's your one-liner? And if they get it right, hand them a $5 bill. And if they don't get it right, they don't get the $5 bill. And it's going to, teach them to learn your damn one-liner, learn what this company does in the simplest way possible. So no matter what environment you're in, you're not missing that opportunity. And B, positive reinforcement helps everyone.
I'm digging your style here, man. I don't know if I'm going to get punched in the face if I don't know my one-liner, or if I'm going to get a $5 bill. It's very unique. Very East Coast.
very East Coast. But I bring that up because I said in the beginning, the worst thing that you can do at a show is just not know what lane you're in.
Yeah.
Not going to be taken seriously. And you're not going to have the conversations, the aspirational conversations that you want to have. But if you go in there super solid, I help so-and-so with so-and-so, how can I help you? Well, instantly you're going to weed out the people who don't want to talk to you, but the people that do and you actually solve their problem, well, how can you help me? How can we help? It happens to me all the time because I know my one-liner. And, whether I'm putting, little pieces of paper in my pockets, I did this on Infocomm. 100%. Here's my trick at Infocomm. I had pieces of paper in every one of my pockets with my one-liner. And I have a couple different ones depending on who I'm talking to. I kind of, scour.
You're giving away your secrets, man. You're giving away the secrets.
Hey, it's just leaving it.
You're adding value to my show, man. I appreciate it.
But literally type them up, write them down actually, because by writing it, you're going to put it in your mind a lot more. Write it down on Post-its, put it in your pocket, and you're always going to remember your one-liner. Guaranteed.
Sounds good, man. Now we've reached the point of the show where it gets personal, and it may get a little weird. Ready?
Weirder the better.
The weirder the better. All right, let's first start off with this question. Since you are a marketing person and you mentioned spam, do you eat spam?
Do I eat spam? No, I'm trying. No, I do not. I have in the past when I lived in Southern California because a lot of Asian populations like spam and eggs.
Yeah, like fried spam?
Fried spam, yeah. It's decent, but haven't had it in a while.
Ugh. Gross. Next question. In a battle, and you, again, we're going back to your marketing mindset here. In a battle, who would win? Gary V or Seth Godin?
Gary V scrappy AF. So
super scrappy.
Super scrappy. Gary V is like taking off his shoe and throwing it at Seth's head or something like that. Although I would love to see Seth just take down Gary. I mean, Gary scrappy. He's winning.
So he's biting at the ankles and he's gnawing you down. That's awesome.
But I think if you throw Mark Cuban in the mix, I think Mark Cuban would absolutely crush Gary V. Small stature of a man. Just saying.
Well, obviously we know that you're on team Mark Cuban. That's awesome. All right, man. You're a traveling man. Which one do you prefer, plane, train, or automobiles?
Oh boy. Up until mid 2017, I had never driven across the country. Within 6 months, I drove across the country 3 times, and I love driving. And I drive a manual. So if you don't drive a manual, I don't necessarily think you belong in an automobile. So
tell me it's a Fiat.
A little Cinquecento, I don't. Okay, so it's such a loaded question. I prefer the control I have with driving. I prefer the sometimes comfort and ease of a train. But I really enjoy how distances are shrunk by an airplane, but I get a little anxious on airplanes, no matter how much I fly, right? Like I still get
not fast enough.
Right. So I'm walking. There's my answer.
So you mentioned somebody in our meeting, and now you're going to get the question because I'm going to put you and maybe him on the spot later. Somebody that I'm going to be bringing on is Mr. Mazzaros, who is the president of OpenEye and also the president of SEGD,
correct,
Society for Design Engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me something about Brian that nobody would know and that I can call him out on.
Something about Brian that oh man, there's so many things about Brian that are just quirky and just
give me a cork because I want something good on the weird questions. How did you know?
I mean, besides his infatuation with chain restaurants, Brian very much.
I know his chain restaurant favorite, and I can call him out on that one.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to leave it at that. I will say this. Something that most people about Brian don't know is he is he's actually a pretty throwdown good barbecue cook. And every year he throws, like he calls it, his Midsummer Nights Classic. And he cooks all night and barbecues and just throws these kind of parts off. So here it is. So that's going to lead me to the one thing you don't know about Brian is he is an absolute master at throwing amazing events and curating like to the time, to the hour on where you should be. He should be a cruise director in like
that's the one after the wrong profession.
And I tell him that all the time. Like, hey man, like you're in the wrong field. You need to be curating experiences for groups of people and being a tour guide.
That's awesome. So he's an undercover pit master.
Yeah.
He should be maybe Julie from the Love Boat. Right. And he should be leading the electric slide
100%
on Sundays at any dance hall and bingo hall.
I mean, no, really. I mean, perfect example. I think it was last year at DSC. We're all there, we're hanging out, and then all of a sudden, Brian's like, "Hey, we're gonna go to a baseball game. We're gonna go indoor skydiving, and then we're gonna top it up with an Incubus concert at the Hard Rock." I'm like, "Dude, done." And like, he just curates this whole thing and like
makes it happen.
Just makes it happen. And so he very much is, he lives the experience, not just talks about it and designs them for his brands and his clients, but lives that every day, which is his day to day.
Awesome. You've been hearing you guys have been watching, listening, and letting it sink in. Steve Picanza, thank you for joining me on Rebels and Flux. Where can we find out more information about you, Latin and Code? Where can we find this information on the internet?
Sure. Well, I love Twitter. I think it's a fantastic medium for the time being. So you can find me at Picanza, Picanza. Latin and Code is simple. You can check me out at latinandcode.com. That's my consultancy. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Steven Picanza. I mean, there's really only one of me. Like there are no other Steven Picanzas in the world. So just Google me and just have a good day.
The mold was broken, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Rebels and Flux. My name's Chris Netto. You can find me at the Twitters right underneath here on this little thing that's going to slide out. We call that the lower thirds.
Here it is.
Maybe we kind of do call it a factoid. I don't know. But you can find us at all over the place. Actually, no, you can't find us. You'll find us on the Twitters. You'll find me on Twitter at Chris_Netto. The sponsor of the show, Starin. You can find them at starin.biz. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Rebels and Flux.